You stand 50 yards away from a beast weighing 6 tons, with skin as thick as armor and tusks that can crush your chest in a heartbeat. For 99% of human history, taking a single step toward that predator was a guaranteed death sentence. You had no claws, no venom, and fragile bones. Modern humans assume our ancestors survived through pure muscle or massive numbers. But raw physical power was never your species' greatest advantage on the prehistoric battlefield. How did a creature with soft skin and weak jaws become the most terrifying apex predator to ever walk the earth? The answer began with a lethal calculation. To understand why weapons changed everything, look at your evolutionary cousins, the Neanderthals. They were massive, heavily muscled, and built like Stone Age gladiators. For hundreds of thousands of years, the primary hunting weapon was a thick, wooden, thrusting spear. To kill an animal, you had to get within arm's reach. In 1995, anthropologists Thomas Berger and Eric Trinkhaus analyzed trauma patterns across Neanderthal skeletons. What they discovered was genuinely shocking. The fracture patterns on their skulls and upper limbs matched only one modern profession: professional rodeo riders who wrestle raging bulls at point-blank range. Every single meal came with shattered ribs, cracked forearms, or smashed jaws. Thrusting a spear into a thrashing bison was basically a coin toss with death. If your tribe loses 2 strong hunters every single winter, your entire family line eventually goes extinct. Evolution demanded a completely new survival strategy. The equation was brutally simple. You needed to kill dangerous game from beyond the reach of their horns, claws, and crushing weight. You needed distance. Your ancestors attempted to throw bare wooden spears by hand, like the 400,000-year-old weapons discovered in Schöningen, Germany. But bare muscle had severe physical limits. A hand-thrown spear loses energy rapidly through air resistance. At 30 yards, it bounces harmlessly off thick mammoth hide like a child's twig. Human muscles alone could not generate enough kinetic energy to pierce heavy bone from a safe perimeter. Your ancestors had reached an evolutionary brick wall. Until around 30,000 years ago, when someone picked up a piece of carved reindeer antler and unlocked the deadly secret of mechanical leverage. Look at your own arm today. You are the only primate on Earth that can throw an object with deadly accuracy and blistering speed. A full-grown chimpanzee has twice your upper body pulling strength, yet if it throws a rock, it barely reaches 20 miles per hour. In 2013, Harvard researcher Neil Roach discovered that your shoulder evolved into an elastic catapult, storing kinetic energy like a pulled bowstring. Your waist, shoulders, and twisted arm bones rotate in sequence, whipping a wooden shaft forward. But biology hit an absolute physical ceiling. No matter how much an ancient hunter trained, human tendons cannot accelerate a heavy spear beyond about 90 miles per hour. Meanwhile, your targets were walking tanks. An adult mammoth was shielded by thick, matted fur, tough leather, and dense layers of muscle. The brutal law of physics dictated survival. Kinetic energy equals half the mass multiplied by velocity squared. Speed matters infinitely more than weight. If you double the weight of your spear, you only double its impact. But if you double its speed, you quadruple its penetration. Throwing a heavier spear by hand slowed the flight down to a crawl, dropping short of the target into the frozen dirt. Throwing a lighter dart made it wobble helplessly in sub-zero winds, failing to pierce even the shallowest layer of animal fat. Pushing human muscle any harder risked tearing shoulder ligaments directly off the bone, leaving a crippled hunter to freeze in the wilderness. Your ancestors could not simply evolve bigger muscles without starving, because massive muscle tissue burns immense amounts of scarce daily calories. The solution was an act of pure mechanical genius. Do not change the human body, but change the physics of the throw itself. By carving an artificial extension that hooked behind the spear, they created an external wrist joint that doubled the arc of leverage. This simple carved wooden stick was the Atlatl, and it was about to rewrite the rules of hunting across 5 frozen continents. An Atlatl is deceptively simple. A wooden rod about 2 feet long, equipped with a handle at one end and a small hook at the other. The spur at the back fits snugly into a hollow cup, carved into the base of a long, flexible dart, locking them together. When you hold the Atlatl, your arm's mechanical length instantly increases by 60 centimeters. You have effectively grafted a second elbow onto your skeleton. As you swing forward, the lever delays the release of the dart, acting like a whip that flings the projectile with terrifying rotational acceleration. While a hand-thrown spear maxes out around 40 miles per hour, an Atlatl dart rockets forward at speeds exceeding 95 miles per hour. Experimental archaeologist John Whitaker proved that an Atlatl generates up to 4 times the kinetic energy of any spear thrown by human hands alone. That extreme velocity changes everything. A fast projectile doesn't just scratch thick hide, it shatters ribs and drives straight into the animal's vital organs. Suddenly, your lethal range expands from a terrifying 15 paces to 50 yards away, allowing you to strike long before a predator even smells you. At 50 yards, you are entirely outside the charging zone of an enraged bison. If you miss your first shot, you still have time to reload. This technology spread across the globe like wildfire, appearing in Ice Age, Europe, the Americas, and in Australia as the deadly Woomera spear thrower. In French caves, archaeologists discovered intricately carved antler atlatls depicting bison and birds, proving these were cherished, highly specialized hunting survival tools. Unlike a heavy spear requiring a full-body run-up, an atlatl can be launched with a simple flick of your wrist from a hidden, crouching position. Darts were thinner and lighter than heavy spears, meaning a single hunter could easily carry a quiver of 5 lethal rounds across miles of tundra. The atlatl became the great biological equalizer. Physical size no longer mattered. A lighter, agile hunter could generate the exact same lethal kinetic force. Yet, leverage was only half the equation. To truly conquer the Ice Age, your ancestors had to master an even deeper secret: stored spring energy. If you make an atlatl dart completely rigid like a broomstick, it flies erratically and shatters upon release. It must bend. During the forward throw, the dart compresses and bows like a spring, storing immense mechanical tension before snapping straight at release. To fine-tune this violent spring action, your ancestors attached carved polished stones, known as banner stones, directly onto the wooden thrower. These stone weights acted like counterbalances, dampening hand tremors and synchronizing the lever's swing with the natural flex of the dart. Yet even a perfectly balanced missile is useless if the stone tip snaps off when striking thick bone. Shock absorption was essential. At Sibadu Cave in South Africa, archaeologist Lynn Wadley discovered that ancient hunters were practicing sophisticated chemical engineering 70,000 years ago. They boiled plant resin and mixed it with ground red ochre powder, creating an advanced prehistoric epoxy that never became brittle in freezing cold. Next, they bound the stone point with wet animal sinew. As the sinew dried, it shrank, clamping the blade tighter than iron bolts. Before chipping the stone, they baked silkrete rocks in underground fire pits for days, altering the mineral crystal structure for razor-sharp edges. The resulting stone blade was sharper than a modern surgical scalpel, designed to sever major arteries with almost zero frictional resistance. At the rear of the shaft, they attached split bird feathers in a subtle spiral, spinning the dart like a rifle bullet. They even engineered detachable bone foreshafts. Upon impact, the heavy point remained buried inside the prey while the precious main shaft bounced free. This was a modular weapon system, the prehistoric equivalent of a reloadable ammunition magazine, designed for rapid re-engagement during high-stakes hunts. Every single millimeter of this weapon required master knowledge of botany, chemistry, geology, and aerodynamics passed down through hundreds of generations. Armed with this composite technology, your ancestors were finally ready to track the most dangerous titan of the Ice Age, the woolly mammoth. You track massive footprints, sinking deep into the frozen permafrost. The wind is biting, but your breath stays calm as you read the broken branches. Ahead stands a solitary old mammoth bull, separated from the protective herd. In earlier centuries, approaching this giant was suicide. Today, you have a plan. Your hunting party spreads out along a low, snowy ridge, positioning yourselves 40 yards away, comfortably beyond the reach of a sudden charge. Not a single word is spoken. With simple hand gestures, your leader coordinates the firing angles so every dart strikes the vital chest cavity simultaneously. You drop onto one knee behind a frozen boulder, locking the antler spur of your atlatl into the notched cup of your long dart. In one synchronized motion, 3 hunters stand and whip their arms forward. The wooden levers flex, snapping with explosive mechanical violence. The darts tear through the freezing air at nearly 100 miles per hour, their spiral feathers keeping them dead on target across the snow. Impact. The razor-sharp flint heads slice cleanly between massive ribs, burying deep into the beast's lungs and severing critical blood vessels. The enraged mammoth spins around with a deafening roar, but its terrifying tusks slash only empty air 40 yards away from your concealed position. You remain completely calm. Without stepping into the danger zone, you immediately reach into your quiver and snap a fresh foreshaft into your dart. A second coordinated volley strikes home. The massive animal slows, deprived of oxygen, unable to close the distance against invisible strikes. Minutes later, the 6-ton titan collapses into the snow. Not a single hunter in your tribe has suffered a broken bone or crushed limb. This is not myth. At Siberian dig sites like Lugovsko, archaeologists uncovered mammoth vertebrae with prehistoric stone points embedded deep inside the bone. A single mammoth kill provided your tribe with hundreds of pounds of calorie-dense fat, insulating hide, and bone tools to survive the brutal winter. But the Atlatl didn't just conquer giant beasts. When your ancestors encountered another human species in the forests of Europe, it decided everything. When your Homo sapiens ancestors migrated into Ice Age Europe 45,000 years ago, they did not find an empty continent. Another human species was already waiting. Neanderthals were biological powerhouses. With barrel chests, dense bone structures, and massive shoulder muscles, an average Neanderthal could easily overpower a modern Olympic weightlifter. In a straight hand-to-hand brawl, your ancestor had zero chance of winning. But human survival was never about winning an arm wrestling match in the snow. Anthropologist John Shea demonstrated that while Neanderthals relied almost exclusively on heavy thrusting spears, Homo sapiens arrived carrying lethal projectile standoff weapons like the Atlatl. To secure meat, Neanderthal hunters still had to charge within feet of dangerous prey, taking massive physical beatings on nearly every hunt in the frozen forests. Your ancestors never engaged at close range. With Atlatls, you could strike prey and potential rivals from 40 yards away, staying completely out of danger. This difference created a devastating metabolic trap. A heavily muscled Neanderthal required up to 5,000 calories every single day just to survive the freezing winter. Your ancestors had leaner frames that burned far fewer calories, while your projectile weapons allowed smaller hunting parties to bring home massive amounts of meat safely. It was not a cinematic war of extermination. It was a silent ecological squeeze where your superior weapon efficiency starved your competitors out of their hunting grounds. When herds of fast reindeer and wild horses migrated across open plains, Atlatl darts brought them down effortlessly, while heavy thrusting spears proved completely useless. As Neanderthal hunting groups suffered constant injuries and lost vital hunters, their small, isolated tribes slowly shrank across the European landscape generation after generation. Computer models show that just a 2% difference in annual mortality was enough to drive Neanderthals to extinction within a few thousand years. Yet they never completely vanished. Before they faded, our species interbred, leaving about 2% Neanderthal DNA alive inside your own genome today. The Atlatl proved a universal evolutionary rule. Mechanical leverage will always beat biological brute force. But human weapon innovation was only getting started. Soon, hunters would shrink these lethal physics even further, creating a miniature tension engine that fit in the palm of your hand, the bow. Around 54,000 years ago, your ancestors unlocked the next great mechanical leap, condensing an entire throwing arm into a single handheld wooden bow. At Grotte Mandrin in France, archaeologist Ludovic Slimak uncovered tiny flaked stone points bearing high-velocity impact fractures, characteristic only of mechanical arrowheads. Instead of relying on whole-body rotation, a bow stores mechanical strain energy directly inside bent wood fibers, releasing it in single milliseconds. Stone tools shrank dramatically into microliths, razor-sharp stone flakes, smaller than a postage stamp, slotted into carved bone and wooden arrow shafts. To make lightweight arrows lethally effective against massive game, your ancestors turned to biological chemistry, coating stone tips with natural plant and beetle toxins. A tiny scratch from a poisoned arrow didn't need to shatter bones. It quietly shut down the animal's nervous system as the hunter patiently tracked. With a bow, an archer could lose 6 lethal arrows in the time it took an Atlatl thrower to ready 2 darts, all while remaining completely motionless. This weapon system unlocked entirely new food sources: fast waterfowl, agile tree monkeys, and elusive forest antelopes, previously untouchable by heavy spears. Combined with rapid climate shifts, this relentless human firepower pushed mammoths, woolly rhinos, and giant cave bears past their ecological breaking points. For the first time in planetary history, a single, fragile, bipedal ape stood completely unchallenged at the absolute summit of the global food chain. Lethal standoff weapons transformed human society. Small family bands could feed themselves reliably without needing massive hunting parties, creating unprecedented freedom. Inevitably, the exact same ballistic tools designed to harvest calories were eventually turned against other human groups as territorial disputes arose. At the archaeological site of Nataruk in Kenya, 10,000-year-old skeletons were uncovered with stone blade projectiles embedded permanently in bone. From flint atlatls to compound bows, every modern firearm, artillery shell, and ballistic missile shared at this exact prehistoric lineage of standoff killing distance. Millions of years of perfecting projectile weapons didn't just conquer the wild, it rewired your modern brain with survival instincts you still use every single day. Ever wonder why modern humans are utterly obsessed with ball sports like baseball, basketball, and throwing darts with laser precision at a target? Your brain contains dedicated neural circuits that calculate wind velocity, gravity, and parabolic arcs in 50 milliseconds without you solving a single math equation. When an object flies toward your head, your amygdala triggers an involuntary flinch before your conscious mind even registers what is happening. Even your eyes evolved prominent white sclera, so fellow hunters could instantly track where you were looking during coordinated, silent projectile ambushes. Notice how every human child across every culture instinctively picks up rocks and throws them at targets without a single lesson. It is hardwired. Your rotator cuff, elastic wrist ligaments, and depth perception vision are living artifacts, engineered by hundreds of thousands of years of projectile hunting. You are an apex ballistic predator sitting under fluorescent lights, carrying nervous system wiring designed to bring down mammoths across freezing sub-zero tundras. Without the safety buffer created by standoff weapons, human tribes would have remained trapped in constant, crippling physical trauma just to secure dinner. Without this simple wooden lever, the heavily muscled Neanderthals might have outlasted our fragile species on the frozen steppes of Ice Age Europe. Instead, a modest carved antler hook turned human physical fragility into undisputed dominance, proving that human ingenuity is our greatest biological weapon. The same laws of physics that launched a flint dart across 30 yards of snow now guide human spacecraft into the blackness of deep space. So, the next time you pick up a pen, throw a ball, or look at your own hands, remember the deep time story carved into your bones. You are not just a spectator in modern civilization. You are the living survivor of humanity's greatest, most lethal technological revolution. Today, you stand at that exact same 50-yard distance, no longer trembling in the snow, because when your ancestor carved that wooden lever, they conquered nature and built your world.